Once upon a time, in a world not so different from our own, money bought more than it does today. Imagine this. Just a few years ago, with a single dollar in your pocket, you could buy a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, or even a dozen eggs. But as time passed, something strange happened. That same dollar began to lose its strength, like a superhero zapped of powers, struggling to buy the same goods it once did effortlessly. This phenomenon, my friends, is what we call inflation. Inflation is like a silent tide that slowly rises, engulfing the purchasing power of our money. It means that over time, the cost of everything around us, from groceries to gas, goes up. For most people, this sounds like bad news. It feels like trying to run a race where the finish line keeps moving further away. But what if I told you that not everyone sees inflation as a villain? In fact, some see it as an opportunity to grow their wealth. Yes, you heard that right. While many of us worry about how much more expensive life is getting, there are those who have found ways to use inflation to their advantage. These are often the wealthy, who, like skilled sailors, know how to navigate the inflationary waves and harness the wind in their sails. Now you might be wondering, how do they do it? How do the rich manage to make money even when the value of money itself is going down? Well, that's exactly the journey we're about to embark on. We're going to uncover the secrets and strategies that allow the rich to not just survive, but thrive during times of inflation. And who knows? By the end of this video, you might find that you too can adopt some of these strategies, turning the tide of inflation in your favor. First, let's understand that inflation isn't just about prices going up. It's a sign of a living, breathing economy. Just like seasons change, economies go through cycles of growth and contraction, and inflation is a part of that natural rhythm. But here's the catch. Not all investments or savings are affected by inflation in the same way. Some assets, like certain stocks or real estate, may actually increase in value faster than the rate of inflation. This means that while the money under your mattress might buy you less and less each year, the right investments could grow in value, giving you more purchasing power over time. To make this a bit clearer, imagine you're at a market with a variety of shops. Some shops sell perishable goods like fruits and vegetables that might spoil if not sold quickly. Other shops sell durable goods like jewelry or antiques that might become more valuable over time. If the market represents the economy, inflation is like the increasing cost of renting a shop space. The sellers of perishable goods, akin to keeping cash or certain types of investments, might struggle as their costs rise. But those dealing in durable goods, similar to investing in assets that outpace inflation, can adjust their prices and potentially profit as the value of their goods increases relative to the rent they pay. Let's say you're playing a video game where, as you level up, the items you need to buy become more and more expensive, but the coins you collect stay the same. That's inflation in action in the real world. Over time, the money you have buys less than it did before. The causes of inflation. To understand how some people make money from inflation, we first need to grasp what inflation really means. Think of inflation like a balloon. When you pump air into a balloon, it gets bigger. Inflation is like pumping more money into the economy. The more money there is chasing after the same amount of goods and services, the more prices rise. It's like if everyone in town wanted to buy the same limited edition toy, the store might start charging more because so many people want it. Several things can cause inflation. Sometimes it's because the cost of making things, like materials or wages, goes up, so the prices of products go up too. Other times, it might be because people have more money to spend, like when the government gives out extra money, so they start buying more stuff, driving prices up. And sometimes, it's simply because everyone thinks prices will go up, so they start raising prices or asking for higher wages in anticipation. Inflation isn't all bad or all good. It's like the weather, part of the economic climate. A little bit of inflation is actually healthy for the economy because it encourages people to spend and invest rather than just keep their money under the bed. If prices are slowly rising, you might decide to buy that new bike now rather than wait and pay more later. But just like weather, too much inflation can be a problem. If prices rise too quickly, people might struggle to afford basic needs, or they might stop spending altogether because everything feels too expensive. Imagine if, in our video game analogy, the cost of items jumped so high that players couldn't afford the tools they needed to play. Players might just quit the game, right? How the rich navigate inflation. Here's where our story gets interesting. While most people feel the pinch of inflation, the wealthy often see it as an opportunity. But how? Remember, not all investments are affected by inflation in the same way. For instance, if you own a piece of land or stocks in fast-growing companies, these assets might increase in value over time, even as the dollar's purchasing power decreases. The wealthy have access to financial advisors and information that help them invest in assets that not only keep up with inflation, but also grow in value. They might buy real estate in areas where property values are rising or invest in businesses that can easily adjust their prices with inflation. In a way, they're always looking for the best equipment in our video game analogy, items that will help them advance no matter how the game changes. Throughout history, there have been many periods of high inflation. Each time, those who were prepared and understood how to use inflation to their advantage came out ahead. For instance, during the 1970s in the United States, inflation was very high, but people who invested in real estate or stocks often saw their investments grow significantly in value. Economists and financial experts often have different views on inflation. Some say a little inflation is good because it drives economic growth. Others warn about the dangers of inflation spiraling out of control. However, most agree that understanding inflation is crucial for making smart financial decisions. Whether you're a billionaire or just starting to save, it's important to remember that inflation is a complex but natural part of the economy. Just like navigating a ship through changing seas, managing your money during inflation requires understanding, preparation, and sometimes a bit of courage. The wealthy use their resources and knowledge to make inflation work for them, but the principles they apply can often be adapted by anyone willing to learn and pay attention. Now that we understand the backdrop of inflation and how it affects our economy and daily lives, let's journey into the 8 strategies that rich people use to make money when prices keep going up. Number 1. Real estate investments. Imagine owning a magic house that increases in value even when everything else is getting more expensive. That's what real estate can be like during inflation. When prices go up, often so does the value of property and the rent that people pay to live there. Wealthy individuals buy houses, apartments, and sometimes even bigger properties like shopping centers. Then, as inflation rises, so does the value of these properties and the rent they collect. It's like having a tree that grows money instead of leaves. Number 2. Commodities and precious metals. Now, think about a treasure chest filled with shiny gold, silver, and precious stones. During times of inflation, many rich people invest in commodities like these because their value often goes up when money's value goes down. Gold, for example, has been a favorite for centuries. It's like a lifeboat that stays afloat even when the economic seas get stormy. Number 3. Stock market strategies. The stock market is like a giant casino, but with better odds if you know what you're doing. During inflation, certain companies can adjust quickly by raising their prices, which can lead to higher profits and, in turn, higher stock prices. Wealthy investors look for these companies, often in industries like technology, energy, and consumer goods. It's like being on a team with the best players during a game. If they score, you win too. Number 4. Debt instruments. Imagine borrowing a bag of gold coins when they're really heavy and returning them when they've magically become lighter. That's somewhat what happens with certain types of debt during inflation. Rich people invest in things like inflation-indexed bonds, which increase in value along with inflation, or they borrow money to invest in assets that grow faster than the rate at which they have to pay back the loan. It's a way of making inflation work for them, like harnessing the wind to sail faster. Number 5. Entrepreneurship and innovation. Starting a business during inflation can be like planting a garden in rich, fertile soil. Everything grows more robustly, including prices. Wealthy entrepreneurs invest in businesses that offer products or services that are in demand, even when prices are rising. They might also innovate, finding new ways to provide value that lets them adjust their prices with inflation. This strategy is about creating something valuable that grows over time. Number 6. Currency plays. The world of money is vast, with different currencies acting like unique creatures in a financial jungle. During inflation, some rich people become currency traders, swapping money from one country to another to benefit from changes in value. It's like being a merchant in an ancient market, trading spices for silk and silver for gold. The goal is to end up with more value than you started with, despite the shifting sands of the economy. Number 7. Tax strategies. Navigating taxes during inflation is like finding a secret map that leads you through a maze of potential traps. The wealthy use smart tax planning to protect their money from being eroded by inflation. This might mean choosing investments that offer tax advantages or structuring their finances in ways that minimize what they owe. It's a complex game, but winning means keeping more of their treasure. Number 8. Alternative investments. Finally, imagine having a collection of rare artifacts, each with its own story and value. Wealthy individuals often invest in alternative assets like art, antiques, and even collectible items like vintage cars or fine wine. These investments can increase in value over time, often outpacing inflation. It's like having a secret room filled with treasures that only become more precious.